There was a bulldozer headed straight for my horse stables, and I swear, it felt like something out of a bad dream. I was standing there barefoot with a mug of half-drunk coffee, blinking into the morning sun while this massive piece of machinery rumbled across my gravel. And right in front of it stood the queen of the HOA herself, sun hat like a crown, clipboard like a sword, yelling at the operator to push through the fence. You know that moment when reality doesn't quite register because it's too ridiculous to be true? That was me, frozen on the front porch, wondering how the hell we got here. And then, like a scene change in a movie, my neighbor's dog started barking like crazy. I turned my head, and just behind me, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up smooth as you please. The window dropped halfway, and the deputy inside leaned out and said 7 words that stopped everything cold. "Those horses belong to the sheriff's department, ma'am." Karen's face, and yeah, her real name's not Karen, but let's be honest, it fits, turned so pale I thought she might faint. The bulldozer idled. The engine rev dropped. And just like that, the drama she'd spent weeks building cracked right down the middle and started to collapse. Now, rewind about 3 weeks. It all started when I agreed to do a favor for a buddy of mine, Jeff, a deputy with the county sheriff's office. I own 10 acres just outside a little town called Red Ridge, tucked behind some pine trees, with a gravel driveway that snakes up from the road. Technically, I'm not under any HOA rule, but unfortunately, I live next to a neighborhood that is, and not just any HOA. This one runs like a private fiefdom. Their meetings sound like courtroom sessions, and their president, Karen Whitley, treats the place like a palace. Anyway, Jeff called me up one night, said the department's horse stables were under emergency renovations, and asked if I could temporarily board a few of their mounted patrol horses. Said they'd cover costs, insurance, feed, everything. I said yes without even blinking. These folks helped me out years back during a rough time, and I owed them more than a few favors. Plus, the horses were calm, disciplined, didn't spook easily, and took up less trouble than half the dogs I've fostered over the years. The next morning, though, that piece shattered like glass under boots. I was out feeding the horses, 3 beautiful animals, all microchipped, tagged, registered under the sheriff's department, when Karen stormed across her side of the fence with a tape measure in one hand and her phone in the other. She started firing off questions like an over-caffeinated prosecutor. Are you licensed? Did you file a noise permit? Do you know how much manure violates municipal code? I tried to stay polite, kept pouring the feed, but the look in her eyes said she wasn't looking for answers, she was looking for a fight. Over the next week, she escalated. HOA violation slips started appearing under my gate. She even printed one on bright pink cardstock that said my stable roof clashed with neighborhood aesthetics. I laughed at first. I genuinely did. Thought it was a joke. But then, a city code officer showed up in my driveway. Said he got an anonymous report about illegal livestock housing. I handed him my zoning permit, and then I showed him the paperwork for the horses, all official, microchipped, and listed under the sheriff's department. The man blinked, looked at the files, then muttered something like, "This is way above my pay grade," before walking back to his car. A day later, Karen came by with a bullhorn. A literal bullhorn. Started shouting across the fence about unsanitary livestock conditions and public nuisance levels of odor. One of the horses, Marley, big gentle boy, part Percheron, got so spooked he nearly broke through the gate. I called Jeff, told him what was going on. He said, "Keep calm. Log everything. We're already looking into her behavior." So I kept logging, kept filming, kept feeding the horses, and praying Karen would eventually get bored. Instead, she brought a bulldozer. It was a Thursday morning. I had just stepped out, still groggy, holding my coffee when I heard the diesel engine growling like some prehistoric monster. I walked down the driveway, and there it was, a full-size dozer parked at the edge of my fence, 2 guys in neon vests standing nearby, and Karen in the middle of it all like she was posing for a Power Move magazine cover. I walked up and asked what the hell was going on. One of the workers shrugged and said he had a demolition order for Lot 32 unauthorized structures, meaning my stables per HOA directive. I told him this wasn't HOA land. He shrugged again. "We just go where the paperwork says," he told me. That's when Karen shoved her laminated permit in my face. "You have 72 hours to vacate," she said, all proud of herself. I looked at her and said, "Karen, you so much as scratch those stables, you're messing with county property." Not mine. She laughed. What's the county going to do? She said, all smug. And that's exactly when Jeff pulled up in his cruiser. He stepped out, calm as ever, walked straight to the driver, and said, "You might want to cut that engine before this becomes a felony property damage case." Then he turned to Karen and raised an eyebrow. "You forged this permit?" She started talking fast, VY Sewell Harmony, unacceptable structures, community standards, the usual HOA bingo card. Jeff just pulled out his radio and called in for permit verification and legal clarification. Then he told the workers they were about 30 seconds from being arrested if they didn't back off. One of them didn't even wait, killed the engine, and said, "We're out." Karen went from smug to rattled to furious in less than a minute. "This isn't over," she yelled, stomping away like a cartoon VY lane. Jeff leaned in and said, "She's digging her own hole. Let her." And boy, did she. The next morning, I woke up to find my mailbox plastered in colorful violation slips. One even accused me of underground water theft. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then animal control showed up. Officer Linda Hill. Serious lady, clipboard, camera. Said she got an anonymous complaint about horse neglect. I walked her through everything: clean hooves, fresh hay, clean water, health records. She nodded, scanned the tags, and said, "These horses are better cared for than half the animals I inspect." Right then, Karen popped up with her phone filming from the other side of the fence, yelling about shady hay stacks and open-air manure zones. Linda gave me this look, turned, and said, "I'm marking this as resolved." Clearly, she's not here for the animals. And then Karen did the one thing you should never do when you're already on thin ice. She faked an email. Tried to make it look like I submitted the demolition permit myself. But she used a county computer, and the metadata gave her away. I sent the file to Jeff, and within the hour, the sheriff's office launched a formal investigation. Fraud, identity theft, impersonating an officer. That came later. Because a few days later, 2 men in fake uniforms showed up at my gate, claiming to be from the HOA Community Enforcement DVY Shown. One flashed a badge that looked like it came from a vending machine. Said I was trespassing on HOA-monitored property. I told them they had 5 seconds to leave. One of them grabbed my arm, so I hit the emergency button on my phone. Jeff and Ruiz, another deputy, showed up 10 minutes later. Saw the situation, cuffed the impersonators right there in front of my stables. One of the horses, Marley again, leaned over and nudged one of the fake officers in the head like he was saying, "Nice try, buddy." And if you think that's the end, you haven't met Karen. She built a wall. A 7-foot-tall wall of plywood and beige paint 3 feet into my property line. Barbed wire on top. A sign that read, "HOA Utility Zone No Entry." She even padlocked my gate shut. Said it was for stormwater management. I called the sheriff. Again, Ruiz came out, took one look, and said, "She's playing with fire." A few nights later, I caught 4 people in dark clothing scanning the fence line, trying to take boundary markers to make it look like my land belonged to the HOA. Sent the footage straight to the sheriff's office. Turns out one of them was part of Karen's new territory mapping committee. That committee didn't even exist until she invented it. At that point, I was done. Not defeated, just done playing defense. I gathered every document, photo, timestamped VY email chain, zoning map, everything, and handed it to the county. The hearing came quick. Karen showed up in a pastel suit with a lawyer who looked like he'd never seen dirt, trying to argue easement rights and neighborhood beautification. But when it was my turn, I laid it all out. Every forged document, every fake cop, every padlock, violation slip, and public outburst. And then Jeff stood up, as did the actual sheriff, Donnelly, and confirmed on record that I had been hosting official county patrol horses and that Karen's interference had endangered law enforcement property. The board didn't need long. They ruled against the HOA, ordered them to tear down the wall, remove all signage, and slapped them with fines. Karen was removed from office the same day. Word spread fast. What started as a neighbor favor ended with my stables being certified as an official auxiliary patrol station. The sheriff's department even secured a grant to upgrade the place: better lighting, solar panels, emergency shelter. And when all was said and done, the people who once sided with Karen started sending me apology letters. The new HOA president, Greg Solid Guy, invited me to a town meeting to speak about land boundaries. I declined, but I offered to host family days at the stable. One Saturday, we had what the sheriff jokingly called Horse Peace Day. Dozens of families showed up. Kids got to ride the patrol horses, take photos, meet Marley, who was basically a local celebrity by then. And as the sun dipped behind the pasture that evening, Donnelly stepped out of his cruiser, smiled, and told me, "We're designating this place as part of the county's official mounted DVY shown. Certified, protected, permanent." I didn't say much, just nodded and shook his hand. After everything, the fake cops, the bulldozer, the wall, the screaming matches, the VY Ral VY Deos, it ended with peace. Real peace. Earned peace. And a stable that stood stronger than ever. So here's my question to you: what would you have done? Would you have stood your ground? Or let someone bulldoze you into silence? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts about land, law, neighbors, and where the line should be drawn, literally and figuratively. And hey, if this story made you shake your head or crack a smile, go ahead and like the VY Deo. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us that sometimes standing still is the most powerful move you can make. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you on the next ride.